Welcome everybody, we're so glad you're joining us today. My name is Sarah McLean and I am the president of Project 31, and this is Jennifer Harrod. She is our nurse navigator. We are both survivors, and today we're talking about lymphedema. I don't know if you guys have heard that term. I know for me, whenever I was first diagnosed and I had gone in for surgery, I literally was in recovery and I'm coming out of anesthesia and somebody kept telling me this word, lymphedema, and they were like putting these stickers on my arm, like don't get sticks in this arm, don't do blood pressure on this arm, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So we are here to talk about what that is today. So first let's just say, what is lymphedema?
Okay, lymphedema is caused by a disruption in the lymphatic pathway. So it can be an accumulation of the lymph fluid in your arm, just because you've removed that lymph node and it's unable to travel like it normally would.
Mm-hmm. So does it matter how many lymph nodes you've had taken out?
The more lymph nodes you've had, the more at risk you are for it. But honestly, even one lymph node, you could still have the risk of it. If you have radiation, that's a risk for having lymphedema. Also, obesity is a risk as well. Infection, such as cellulitis, and any repetitive tasks that you do with that arm that you've had surgery on
Can trigger it.
Exactly. It could be a risk factor for it, as well as if you have your arm below your heart level more often, then that's another trigger or risk factor for it.
Now I know sticks obviously in this arm, blood pressure, bone bites.
Right.
Can be triggers, I know. Now, okay, does it matter, like is there a time frame of when it can be triggered, or are you at risk like from here on out?
So it can happen shortly after surgery, but it can happen years later. I know for me, it happens 3 years after I had my breast surgery, my mastectomy, and I only had one lymph node removed, but I did have cording afterwards, which is just a hardening of the lymph fluid in that vessel where you've removed the sentinel lymph node. And I did get a physical therapy for that to have that worked out. But it happened about 3 years later. I started just feeling heaviness, swelling, and it was more in my chest. So it
wasn't your arm as much, it was over here.
Right.
I know, like for me, so I was diagnosed the first time in 2003, nothing, and then diagnosed in 2011, nothing. I did do radiation, had more surgery on the side, but for me, it was triggered in, I think, 2018, and mine was triggered at the beach. So my family goes to the beach every summer, and I remember I was under the umbrella just sitting on a chair, and my arm evidently had been hanging out, and I didn't realize that it had been out just my elbow. And that night, I had excruciating pain in my elbow, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it didn't feel like there was a huge sunburn there. And so through the rest of the time, it really didn't go away. And then when I came back, I called our physical therapist that we work with, and she said, "Sarah, your lymphedema was triggered." And I was like, what? So the sun is another trigger that I had no clue was even a thing. So
there's actually, there's some things we can do.
I was going to say, what should you do?
Help prevent lymphedema. Like you mentioned, no sticks, needle sticks to the surgical arm. Also be careful with blood pressure cuffs. Have them taken on your other arm if at all possible. Tight constrictive clothing, like the arm bands in some shirts, if it's really tight, can trigger it, or jewelry that's too tight.
Really?
Like you had mentioned, sun, excessive cold for a period of time, a lengthy period of time, as well as excessive heat, such as from a hot tub, sauna. That can trigger it.
That's true. I know when we're in our hot tub, I usually try to sit on the side where I keep my arm out and keep it up so it's not in the hot.
Yeah, any excessive heat. Also, wearing gloves if you garden, or if you're going to be at risk for anything that could break the skin on that surgical arm. If you're working on harsh chemicals, just wear gloves to help protect it. Those are some great things to do. One thing I'm really bad about and that we really need to try to do is avoid carrying bags or purses on the affected arm.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
And I still do it. Even though I have lymphedema, I always carried my purse in my left arm. So I'm trying to get away
Just people
from
are
that.
aware of that. What about flying?
Flying, if you have been diagnosed with lymphedema and have a sleeve, then it's recommended that you do wear that sleeve
Okay.
when you fly. But if you haven't been prescribed a sleeve and been fitted for one, then I would work on doing that first because you want to make sure it's fitted properly for you.
Okay, so let's say I'm feeling some of this heaviness, the swelling. What would be my first step in trying to figure out if I have lymphedema?
Your first step, if you start noticing that you have swelling, heaviness, and it can be, like you said, in the arm, in the elbow, it can be in the chest, or even the trunk. If you start noticing any of that, if you start noticing redness or any signs of infection, such as a fever or chills, anything like that, that could be cellulitis as well, that could trigger it. So, of course, if it's anything like that, you want to contact your doctor immediately. If you notice any swelling, you're going to contact your oncologist, your surgical oncologist, let them know. That way they can rule out that it's nothing else, that they'll run some tests and be able to tell you, yes, this is lymphedema. And once they do, they can refer you to a lymphedema specialist or lymphedema trained physical therapist.
And you guys can ask her. Like she said, I think the first point of contact should be your medical oncologist to let them know, hey, I think I might have lymphedema, or I'd like to talk with a lymphatic specialist, because you will need a referral or a prescription to be able to go to them. Is that right?
Right, depending on your insurance.
Yeah. So I think that's the first point. And then once you go to that specialist, they will be the ones that can give you, after they evaluate you, because they do a bunch of testing and measurements and things like that just to look at your arm. And then from there, like Jen said, they will give you a prescription to get a sleeve if you need some kind of compression. So we've got some examples here. You want to show us those?
So here is a fun, colorful sleeve.
But you've got one on now too. That one's cute too.
I've got a fun one here. Everybody thinks it's a tattoo.
I know.
So I love freaking people out with that. They've got just plain black. There's also Wear Ease, has a brochure with different compression bras.
Oh, cool.
I wear those to help with the swelling in my chest.
Okay.
So great items. Any of these, you want to be fitted from your lymphedema specialist though. You don't want to cause any more harm. So definitely being fitted. And insurance sometimes, like you said, if you have a prescription, will pay for it. There's also things such as the compression pumps that if they deem necessary, they would order you one. I don't know if everybody can see this. I wear
It's
this
huge
at night.
contraction. Oh my goodness. Well, because there's different stages of lymphedema.
There are. And the quicker you catch it, the more they can do right away for it. If you get referred to a lymphedema specialist or physical therapist, they can do lymphatic massage, which is different than a regular massage. It's a lot lighter.
Right.
And they can teach you how to do that so you do it at home on yourself. And I do that before I even put on my compression garments each day. So there's a lot of different things they can teach you. Once you're diagnosed with lymphedema, you always have it, but it can be managed.
Right, and that's the key, because you don't want it to get out of control, because the swelling will not go down on its own. It will have to be manually moved, and either you need to do it or the lymphatic specialist, like she said, can teach you how to do it. But if you know how to like stay on top of it, then it can be something that is manageable. But you don't want it to get out of control, because it can get pretty painful. We've had several friends that, your hands can swell and things like that too. They do have gauntlets and other different compression garments that you can use in addition to the sleeves too. But really, our heart is to teach you guys about it, so that way you don't have to get to that point, because it is definitely not something that you want to have to deal with on a daily basis.
And one thing that I'd really, I try to encourage women as well when they're diagnosed with breast cancer, before they actually go in for surgery, ask your doctor, ask your
Yeah,
surgical
that's good.
oncologist for a referral to a lymphatic trained physical therapist or specialist.
Mm-hmm.
They can measure your arm, they can show you, they can also measure your range of motion,
Mm-hmm.
show you exercises, tell you what to look for if you possibly think you have lymphedema after your surgery. Then they can wrap around and reassess you after surgery,
Right.
and see if there's any other exercises that would be helpful, measure you again, see, and just keep track of you in case you do need compression devices.
Yeah, that's another key too, is to know the baseline, because a lot of doctors they don't know what you were before you had the surgery, so they really can't gauge it as well. So that is definitely a very valuable thing to do, is to go see them ahead of time, which I don't think anybody ever tells us that, so that's why we're telling you that, because I wish I would have done that as well.
Right, yeah. Doctors, lymphedema is a little bit of a newer subject, I think, with breast cancer. Physicians are getting more aware of it, but still being your own best advocate by asking for that referral ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then if you are diagnosed, they're going to talk to you about all of the things that we've talked about, as well as increasing water intake. That's a huge thing, to flush out the lymphatic system and all those toxins that are in our body.
In exercise can trigger it too, so it's being aware of your body. Not everybody, but you do need to be aware of your body and listen to your body, because I know we've had some friends that have exerted too much energy that's flared it, and then we've had some that it actually helps the fluid move. So it's just, sorry, my dogs are going crazy right now, but you know.
It is what it is.
So,
and I get asked, how do you find a specialist? How do you find somebody that specializes in lymphatic massage? And a lot of times you can find them from your physician, they'll refer you. You can also go to lymphnet.org and they have a list of them. Or you can just reach out to Project 31. We have a list of the local ones in the Oklahoma City area that we work with.
Right. And if you guys have any other questions, if you'd like to learn a little bit more, or maybe need help in being directed, feel free to contact us, because Jen's always available. We will do whatever research we need to be able to help put you in the right place. So go to project31.com, or you can email us again at info@project31.com.